to another Music at Maddens with Lynette Fay, and today we are talking all things Belfast TradFest with the creative director Dónal O'Connor. Hello.
Hello,
how are you?
Fáilte mhaith. Si go híomh fan seo.
Well, gur míle maigad as a bheith páirteach Dónal tá arid our gajiglan lordshire and you. So much we can talk about, but I think the only place to start is the fact that we have a booth here in Maddens. This is basically, we started a podcast because this is what it takes to get one.
Yeah, this is a rare treat. I'm generally sitting over there longingly looking over here hoping to get a space, and you have to start very early to get in here, and then when you get in it's very hard to get out.
It is. And when did you start coming to Maddens?
When I came to Belfast in September 96, I arrived on a Sunday, and most of the bars in the city were closed on a Sunday, and the Hatfield bar was the only place that you could get a drink late on a Sunday. There was a session there with some of the old stalwarts, Andy Dixon, who sadly is no longer, Brendan O'Hare, Davy Maguire, people like that, Jason O'Rourke, and then you know the word was you have to get to Maddens. You know, Maddens is the epicenter of everything in terms of traditional music and culture in this city. So would have made our way down here, and for a time Barry Kerr and I played here on Monday nights. We had many great times here. Richie Brazel was the Farathee here at the time, a character from Dublin who had driven for Dublin Bus, taken early retirement and taken over this place. And then for a time I ran gigs here on Sunday nights. The bar was closed, and we would have had people like Kevin Burke, who's coming to TradFest this summer actually, incidentally, Harry Bradley and John Blake, the great Tommy Peoples. We had a wonderful night here with Tommy Peoples, and Richie was a character. He would he'd be given out to me because somebody would be sitting in the front row drinking sparkling water. And he'd say, "Oh Jesus, Dónal, sitting there drinking bloody sparkling water all bleeding night." And I'd say, "Richie, I can't force people to drink pints again. Sorry, you know, like it's the music we're organising." And then he'd be making sandwiches at halftime, and he'd open the sandwiches and he'd horse in the salt. I said, "This'll get them drinking the bloody Ballygowans." And he'd close them up. So yeah, many great memories have been in this space.
Yeah, it's amazing how even since then it remains at the heart of the community of traditional music here in Belfast. And now, what's it like to see a whole new generation coming in here? You know, I suppose there's nothing that makes you feel old than walking through those doors downstairs, looking to the left and not recognising one person who's sitting around playing tunes.
And that can
happen. Which is a great thing too, though.
That can happen very easily. And like for years there was a core of, I don't know, I'd say maybe there was 20, maximum 30 people in the city that played traditional music in the bars for all of the late 90s and noughties. And this year in programming the session trail for TradFest, we have 198 different individual musicians on the session trail, and loads more to pick from. You know,
both living in Belfast and travelling for the festival.
I'd say they're like 85% people living in Belfast, yeah. So that's kind of frightening how that has scaled up, and how many brilliant and obviously like the session is where you learn your music in your home school, your music group, your cultist group, whatever it might be, and then you move to a city to university, and getting out to play sessions is where you kind of make your stamp, where you meet your people, you build your network of friends, of musicians that you want to play with, meet drinkers, meet people, public, and so for young people to have that opportunity in this city, like Maddens has music I think almost every night of the week, sometimes 2 and 3 sessions in the bar upstairs and downstairs. But there are so many more bars in the city now that are giving these opportunities to young musicians to practice their music, perform their music, engage with other musicians, see how other musicians carry themselves in bars, and you learn so much at that stage in your music career.
Where did you play your first session?
As a child. Well, my parents would have gone to the Willie Clancy summer school, and we would have stayed upstairs in Maisie Friel's bar. And I think I remember as like maybe a 5-year-old being asked to play a few notes. It would have been a very simple tune of some kind. And many occasions, I was very lucky. I was brought up in a musical family, so I was in every bar in Ireland. I think that's what they said, that I was in the wicker basket in every bar in Ireland. In fact, the wicker basket used to be put in the window of the session, and my parents would be playing away, and then they would lift out the wicker basket, and people would go, "Oh, Jesus, there was a baby in there all along." And as they were going out, old fellas would be flicking in coins, silvers, because that was the way with babies then. You always give a child a silver, and that paid for the taxi home. I was very useful.
Way to feel everybody else feeling adequate, though, that you were playing tunes at your first session when you were 5, Dónal. But I wouldn't have expected anything else from you. You mentioned that I suppose that pedigree that you have of coming from a musical family, coming to Belfast like almost 30 years ago, Dónal, which is incredible. But you're growing up. Your mother, Ethna Nualahain, sadly no longer with us, and your daddy, Jerry O'Connor. You're not just were they amazing musicians, but you're coming from lineage on both sides. So in a way, what was that like growing up in a household like that, in a family like that, where music is, I suppose, a second language, or maybe the first language?
Yeah, very much so. I suppose you don't really realise it in its full extent at that age until you get older, until you start seeing it in other families, or you see it from the outside. As you say, my grandmother Rose actually was my fiddle teacher. My dad was touring and playing with Skylark and later on with La Lou. So we went to lessons with Rose, and her father was a fiddle player and her mother was a concertina player, and her great aunts were musicians, and so it kind of just was something we did. It wasn't that prevalent in where we grew up in County Louth. There were a couple of families. There was I was in a Cayley band, so Rose was a fiddle teacher, and she would have supplied all the fiddlers for the Dundalk Cultus, and then later on the John Joe Gardner Cultus Cayley bands that were run by a man called Rory Kennedy. So there were some sort of pivotal figures, and there were some musicians who weren't at my school. So I was kind of probably the only person in my year at my school that played traditional music. So that was kind of, you were mindful of that, and it wasn't very cool.
In what way mindful? Cool. Yeah.
Well, I had Rose had bought me, she thought it was a really nice thing to do, and it was a very nice thing to do, but she brought me a brown crocodile skin, brown leather fiddle case, which was not cool. And so getting on the bus...
Might have been cool in 1972, though.
Definitely wasn't cool in 1991. And you'd get on the bus and you'd be hiding it. You'd be just mortified. But you kept the fact that you played traditional music quiet, amongst your football and playing friends and amongst all your peers, and it wasn't something to boast about. And I think that's different now. I see that it's different now. Yeah. I see that kids now wear Fla hoodies and TradFest hoodies with pride.
Yeah.
That they're
part of that community. Yeah. And that means something to them.
It's a kind of a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And it's something to be proud of. So to see that transformation in a short 30 years, as you say, maybe more.
I know.
It's remarkable, yeah.
But that said, right, whenever you had your brown fiddle case, I've got this image in my head now and I can't get it out. Heading under the seat in the bus. But at that age, right, we're all so vulnerable at that age in our teenage years, and there's trends. We want to fit in. We want to be cool. And you've just said that was not cool to play trad music at that stage. You could have easily rebelled against it. Why didn't you?
Yeah, I actually probably did for a time. So I think between maybe like 13 and 14 or 14 and 15, I didn't play for a year because it was, this is what your parents do, and this is what your granny's making you do, and this is not cool, and there are cooler things to be doing. And I was tuning into pirate radio stations from Dublin, listening to trance and dance and house music, and being
Atlantic 252.
Well, that was also there, but I remember there was a band, Hyperborea.
Yes.
Do you remember them?
Yes.
So we used to tune into them on like Thursday nights, and then we'd go to Caesar's nightclub and ask the DJ would he play Hyperborea. And I was a raver. I was dressing as a raver, and the hair and all that. And so, I did rebel for it. But then I think my mother worked. When I look back on it now, she worked very hard to lure me back in, and she got me playing keyboards with La Lou in a pub gig in Bridge Street in Dundalk. I think it was a kind of a fundraiser for Ken Saro-Wiwa, the Nigerian oil campaigner who was killed, and so I had to learn some chords for that. So it was kind of a slow lure, and then I started playing with La Lou, touring around the world with La Lou, and then when I came to Belfast, I would have had a limited repertoire of tunes, but I brought the fiddle, and as I said, I would have gone to some of those sessions, and meeting some musicians my age was a pivotal moment. Rory O'Kane from Dungiven, Seamus O'Kane's son, Aidan Walsh from Tubbercurry and Sligo, and some other musicians like that. And I distinctly remember sitting in sessions with them in the Rotterdam Bar on a Tuesday night, and I'd have known 5 tunes out of 3 hours of tunes. And that was humbling. And you've a choice then. You can either decide, well, okay, I'm not fit for this, or you sit and you bring the recorder and you tape some of the tunes and you hear some of the tunes, and then you go the next night and you know 10 tunes out of the 200. And you just build your repertoire like that.
Did you ring a recorder to sessions and tape the tunes?
Yes, shamelessly.
Because the little red light. We wouldn't have had phones at that stage, and we wouldn't have just been able to whip out the phone and
a Walkman
start a voice
of some kind. A Walkman of some kind, yeah. And that wasn't I mean,
that would have taken guts to do that too.
Yeah, well, it wasn't very cool, and you knew you had to ask permission, so you definitely would have said, "Listen, lads, do you mind if because I'm trying to learn?" And that was the beauty of playing with musicians your own age. They were like, yeah, whatever. No, older people might have had a different way, because there's a whole etiquette thing with recording people in sessions, which maybe isn't as prevalent now, but back then people were told to put tape recorders away, put cameras away. A lot has changed. A lot has changed. Put them away, right?
And is a couple of focal for Urahori and Fod Crealta Shaw. A couple of words about our very kind sponsors, Rira Irish Lager. Nish Rira, if you haven't heard about it, it kind of sums up the unpredictable devilment that Irish people are so very good at, particularly here in Maddens, in the heart of Belfast. So Rira celebrates the best bits of being Irish by creating reasons to talk, to meet, to gra, to bant, to hear, to be heard, to be lechela, just that little more often. So music at Maddens, dig it and dig and tossa, agus anish, scoopla focal a charja for 18s and over. And please drink responsibly. Couple of focal anish for Urahori and Fod Crealta Shaw music at Maddens. Music at Maddens is sponsored by McIlroy Guitars. Perfectly balanced, superb craftsmanship, wonderful clarity and tone, a truly unique sound. It's only natural to want one. McIlroyguitars.co.uk for more details. And I put them all away. It's mad whenever you think back and you're explaining that. And also, Dónal, I've known you for many, many years. And I did not know that whenever you came to Belfast, you wouldn't have had the repertoire that you do now. Because to me, you've always been, to me, the perception is that your knowledge is encyclopedic, that you understand not just the music, but where it came from, the collections, going back to the well from which we draw, as well as having a great understanding of how we need to progress, how we need to move with the times in order to keep the music relevant. So when do you think you tapped into all of that? What do you think it was?
Well, it's kind of you to say that. I mean, I had a repertoire, but it was my family repertoire. It was my County Louth, Cooley Peninsula repertoire, you could say.
You're fairly proud of Louth now at the minute.
It's not often we get to shout about it, but yeah, first time in 68 years that we won Leinster, so big day out recently. Well, I had to bring my own background of music into a whole other world. So Rory O'Kane was coming from Derry, Mid-Ulster, Donegal connections. His father was very, very renowned, stalwart of the tradition and instrument maker, and everybody came to them. And we would have had the same. Everybody came to us. We were very fortunate in our house. My brother Felemy has said, you grew up in a house where there were poets, painters, pipers, African drummers, acrobats. The
stories
actresses.
You grew up with, like.
Yeah, and so a lot of traditional musicians coming with their music and their repertoire, and a lot of learning from just sitting at the kitchen table listening to people conversing. It was kind of the only thing that was talked about in our house. It was music. Like when people say, "What did you listen to growing up?" and somebody was joking yesterday at Phelan and Galley that you're old when the young people don't know who Britney Spears is. But I didn't know who Britney Spears was. I didn't know any pop artists. I didn't know any mainstream artists. You knew U2, one or two, but
you knew Hyperborea.
Well, yeah, but we were listening to obscure fiddle players on white noise cassette tapes in the car. Trying to make out the music through the white noise. Connie or Con Cassidy or Danny O'Donnell, Donegal fiddle players, or Peter McArdle and Tommy McArdle, two brothers from Talonstown in County Louth, and that was our pop music. So I suppose you build up a knowledge and you build up an understanding, and just kind of had a voracious appetite, I suppose, as much as anything else.
Yeah, it seems so that the appetite was there. And I wondered also, though, given that both your parents, first of all, first question, when you said your mummy was very clever in bringing you into the band and, you know, goading you in that way, that you were feeling like actually, how did you feel at that first gig when you were playing the keys?
Oh, completely out of place and clueless. But a kind of a teenage confidence that gets you through these things, I suppose. That maybe went on longer than my teenage years.
The O'Connor swagger.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of, the confidence of youth is something to be cherished, you know? It really is, because as you get older, you look back and you go, oh my God, did I say or do that or behave like that? So yeah, you just kind of, you get on with it.
I know, but I suppose there's a saying in Irish, you know, and Rud, chain and puastia, neen and puastia, what the child sees, the child does. Was there an element of that involved with, you know, when you see your two parents are in a band together and you're growing up and that, like you say, people coming and having the conversations at the kitchen table, your parents heading off on tour, and that's all you knew. I suppose with retrospect and the benefit of hindsight, looking back, did that bring you to this point in your life where that's a big element of your own life? Yeah,
absolutely. And it's a lot of it is what I said earlier, but not really having any choice. It just felt like this is what we do, you know. And I've sometimes thought about branching into other worlds of festival production or of media production, and I kind of you kind of ask yourself, why am I not going and doing it in a different form, in a different art form, or in a different media? And it comes back to me that this is what I love. You know, this is the thing I understand. This is the thing I have always loved, always had a passion for, and I wouldn't have the same gra or energy or passion for a different type of music or a different art form in the way that I do for this. And maybe that's a crutch. Maybe it's because, you know, it's the only thing I know. But I suppose there's strength to be gained from that, and that, you know, if you invest your entire life in something, that you know, you'd hope you'd know something about it, and that you can maybe impart some of that on.
And did you ever feel a sense of responsibility of having to carry it on, given the, you know, the lineage that you had, that you have had going back generations?
Yeah, well, I remember Rose, my grandmother. She would have said things regularly like, "Save the music, keep the music going." It nearly died out. You know, there was this real sense of preservation
from her generation. From her generation, you think about it.
Absolutely. And she, you know, would talk about how there was only a handful of pipers left before the P. Reeling started up, and only for Coldest and the Flash. She was a big Coldest woman, very, very much in favour of the work that Coldest Culture did and have done. So there was a sense of preservation. There was a sense of saving it. And then on the other side of the family, there would have been the same kind of preservation and saving in terms of the language, and about, you know, we're the only family speaking Irish here at the minute, and, you know, pass it on, make sure your kids are learning it. And so there was a pressure, I suppose, in terms of preservation, in terms of cultural renaissance of some kind, that you would have a hand in that. But when I came to Belfast, I saw other young people who didn't seem to have that same pressure or didn't feel that obligation, and that helps you kind of maybe shake it off a little bit. So the pressure, it never really was an overbearing pressure of any kind, but it was definitely something that you felt like you were being sent out as a missionary. Yeah.
What does it feel like now? You know, we're sitting upstairs in Maddens, where this place is hopping 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And it's because of its what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my God, not recognition, reputation. We're sitting here. How does that feel now? Because we're sitting here in Maddens, in a place that's hopping 7 days, nights a week, because of its reputation for traditional music, and people come here seeking it out. And like you said, you know, you were the teenager who was hiding the fiddle under the bus seat.
Yeah.
But now you're somebody who, you know, you're looking back at all that and going, yeah, I must have been onto something, and I was accidentally, this has been a big part of my life, where you didn't set out to do this by design. Fácan na gá inis ó Arahori and Fáthcréalta seo. A few words now from the sponsors of this podcast, Music at Maddens. Dunville's Irish whiskey, proudly connected to its past and enthusiastically embracing its future. The spirit of Belfast is back, and it's even better than ever. And I should tell you, Dunville's also sponsors Belfast TradFest as well. And this Irish whiskey story is one of fame, fortune, tragedy and revival. It does sound epic, doesn't it? Now restored to its rightful place amongst the world's best whiskies, Dunville's award-winning single malt and vintage blend Irish whiskies are synonymous with premium quality, exquisite taste and rich heritage. And for over 18s only, and please drink responsibly. Sláinte. This week's Music at Maddens is brought to you by Anzac Drinks, which is one of the last remaining family-owned businesses in the north, supplying a wide range of spirits and wines and beers and premium exclusive products, proudly supporting local brands and bringing them to bars and restaurants and off licenses, giving them the spotlight they truly deserve. Along with working in partnership with market-leading global brands, they're committed to personal service, competitive pricing and long-term customer relationships. Anzac Drinks are trusted by independent businesses across Northern Ireland for their reliability and expertise, and they are passionate about helping customers discover both retailer favourites and unique finds. Over 18s only, and please drink responsibly.
Well, one thing was for certain, we understood the value of it. We understood the beauty, as John Kelly one time said in a beautiful piece of archive. He said, we understand the beauty and the grandeur of our music and our culture, and it's for other people to catch on to it. It's for other people to discover it. Yeah. And so if you can help that process in any way, it's a good feeling, and it's a good thing. And going back to your point about how healthy it is, I mean, it's never been as healthy. I don't know if there's any time in the history of Irish traditional music where as many people have enjoyed, played, celebrated, learned the music. So that's an amazing thing. That's an amazing wave to ride on. It's an amazing thing to be part of, to bring your children up in a world where that's where we're proud of what we are, who we are, where we come from, that we're not afraid of external influences, that we're absorbing sounds and cultures and motifs from different worlds of music. And here in Belfast and here in the north, there's a particular soundscape that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world because of the influence of the pipers and the drummers and the fifers and the flute players. And you can absolutely distinctly hear that in the music here in this part of the world. And so one of the missions with Belfast TradFest was to try and amplify that, to try and reflect that, to try and show that, because other parts of this country are very good at celebrating their own distinct brand of traditional music, their own voice, regional dialect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it's up to us to do the same from this part of the world. And so it's very exciting. It's an exciting time to witness a young flute player like Jude Scott, who has learnt his music at the Glengormley School of Traditional Music and has attended almost all of the Belfast summer schools of traditional music and spent time with master flute players like Kevin Crawford and Harry Bradley and tin whistlers like Mary Bergen. And to see that he performed at the Flutopia concert at Scoilgivry that we supported this winter up in Guidor, and he was talking about Belfast flute music and Belfast flute players and Belfast flute tunes, and he played the Boys of Belfast March. And to see that kind of pride of place and pride of dialect in a 17, 18, 19-year-old, that's enriching, that's fulfilling, that feels great.
Mm-hmm. And the same lad knows as well that there's so much that he still has to learn, and he's excited about that.
Yeah.
I've spoken to him recently, and just really, really impressed by him.
Yeah.
So you say there about riding on the crest of a wave, and we find ourselves in a very exciting place now where traditional music is very popular. So many people playing it, as we'll see at Belfast TradFest again this year. But what made you think back in 2017, when the seeds were being sown for TradFest? What made you feel at that point that this was fertile ground here for the city?
Well, I suppose we're all on our own journey, and having my own family, having my own kids makes and them growing up in Belfast makes you think very differently about things. So for a long time in this city, a lot of the great players were people that had come from outside of the city and were living here, but they were kind of representing Belfast music. And so I looked around and I thought, there's a lot of people learning music in the city. There's not a lot of people getting to a very, very, very high level. You know, there's a lot of people getting to a level, a very good level, but getting to the sort of the next level made me question why that was the case. And I had to look back at other great musicians and figure out what it is that gets you from being a very good musician to being a national level musician, if you could call it that. And one of the things I think that has a profound effect in that is you do lessons all sort of school term, and you get to May, and the instrument goes in the case, and quite often it doesn't come out again until September.
Unless your parents are of the mind that they would live the life of going to festivals all summer, but that's not the case for every child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And a summer school experience in the middle of that has almost like a turbo boost effect
on your doorstep.
Music. And so you spend 5 days in a room with a master musician and lots of other musicians learning, and that has a turbo boost, and it makes you practice in advance of it, because you don't want to show yourself up arriving in this room full of other musicians. It makes you really, really fueled with tunes and energy and creative juices after it. And so that gets you as far as September, then you're back into your classes. So there was no summer school of traditional music in the 6 counties. There was no summer school of traditional music in Belfast. Ray Morgan from Glengormley School of Traditional Music and I had this conversation a few times, maybe in these seats, about, how would we go about getting a summer school. And then in 2015, Dermot McLaughlin, who had formerly been the head of traditional arts in Arts and Chorley Allen Arts Council of Ireland, he had been commissioned to write a report on the state of traditional music in the North by the Arts Council. And one of the key findings was there's no summer school of traditional music. And at that same time, we were having these thoughts. And so Ray and I met in my studio every Monday night for 6-7 weeks and formed a plan. And one of my key sort of aims and ambitions was for it to be as inclusive as possible, and to bring all the key stakeholders in traditional music education in the city together, and for it to be inclusive in a cross-cultural basis, and for it to be an amplification of the weekly work that happens in these schools. So you've got great organisations like Glengormley School of Traditional Music, Belfast Trad, Andersonstown School of Contemporary and Traditional Music, Ards Cultus Culturiern, at that time Loch Lee Cultus Culturiern, and then in the world of piping and drumming, the RSPBA NI, the Royal Scottish Pipe Band Association of Northern Ireland, and we engaged with Ian Burrows from that organisation to come meet with us, to have chats, to try and establish a personal relationship with these people first before we considered creating an organisation. And then as time went on, 2016 we founded the charity that is Belfast Summer School of Traditional Music, and we had people from all of those organisations on the board. And the aim was to set up a 5-day summer school of traditional music. I kind of had looked at the Willie Clancy Summer School as the pinnacle of traditional music summer schools, and it is. But I always felt that there was an opportunity for it to be a little bit more than just a summer school, that if you could maybe create a hybrid model that was somewhere between the Willie Clancy Summer School and the early open house festivals that were here in Belfast run by Kieran and Alison Gilmore, or Celtic Connections in Glasgow, and that you would have your summer school as the hub and as the sort of the driving engine of a week-long celebration of traditional music, but then you would also have high-level, high-profile bands in and solo performers in the biggest rooms in this city, and to fill the biggest rooms in this city. And that has been a challenge for festivals and for organisers to get scale to traditional music concert attendances in this city. There's been some brilliant work done by amazing venues in this city for a long time, such as An Droichead, Cultural McAlamo Fiach, the Druncairn Arts Centre, and others, and they're of a size, and to fill those rooms is a huge amount of work and a huge effort, and they have built a core audience of traditional music audiences that come to their venues. There's no other city in Ireland that has that. We're very, very lucky to have that in this city, because we have a selection of people doing the work and building their own unique audiences. And sometimes these audiences overlap like a Venn diagram, and sometimes they don't. And so we felt that we could amplify that a little bit as a kind of a pop-up circus in the summer. You gather up media attention because of that. You gather up maybe national attention because of that. And so we wanted to have the summer school take place 5 days and curate a series of concerts that the tutors that come to the summer school perform in these city venues that I just mentioned. And that we would have concerts in all quarters of the city, and there are more than 4 quarters in Belfast, as you know. There are multiple quarters.
We love keeping it real, and we add to the quarters.
We do.
Yeah.
A new one every 6 months. So we have concerts in the east, the west, the north, and the south of the city, and then we also have concerts in the kind of the well-known big venues in the city: Ulster Hall, Mandela Hall. We've had concerts in the Waterfront Hall. The Black Box Theatre, the Empire Theatre, so that you get a variety. And one of the things that many people comment on when they come here is Belfast is full of great venues. So they go to the Duncairn and they're blown away by the beauty of the space, the beautiful architecture.
And the proximity to the city centre, which some people...
And everything's within...
think about, 10 minutes walk.
2 miles.
Distance,
Yeah. So we're blessed in the city to have that vibrant scene of performance. And you've been Banatee at many of these nights in all of these venues over the years.
Yeah, you've definitely tapped into something, and I can see that with the summer school. People coming from the city here, from all over the north and further afield. It's growing exponentially. But in order to bring this together, you've mentioned the venues. Like, partnerships are really, really important to get something like this off the ground. How did you sell it? What was the sell? Because you're at a position now, Dónal, where you've put in the hard yards. You've done a lot of the hard work. I know there's still a lot more work to do to get where you want to be, because you're extremely ambitious with the project and can see its potential, and rightly so. But in the beginning, when you're trying to set out a pitch and you're trying to make people part with their money, which is not an easy thing to do, what was the pitch? How did you present this idea that you had?
Well, there are 2 separate aspects to the Belfast TradFest that and we have to treat them as such in terms of funding and fundraising. One is the summer school, and then the other is the festival, the concerts, the session trail, the Céilís, the all of those sort of evening time events, I suppose you could call them. And so we were very lucky that we managed to get a small pot of funding from Belfast City Council and from the Arts Council to establish the summer school. And they've been great supporters of our work and see the merit in it. And it has grown. Our first summer school in 2017, we had 87 students in 13 different disciplines. And this year we'll have 56 classes, and we hope to have over 800 students for the 5-day-long program. So there's an appetite for it. And very, very fortunately, in the early days, we established a relationship with Ulster University, and they're the partner in the summer school. They provide the space as a sponsorship in kind to us. Without that, we just couldn't function. And we have like 50 classrooms that we need for the summer school. So that's a huge, huge partner. The Arts Council and Belfast City Council, as I say, have supported us from one. And then you build up you have to try and build up a whole pool of other funders and sponsors for different aspects of the festival. So McConnell's were a sponsor for us in early days, and thankfully for the last couple of years and for the next couple of years, hopefully, Dunville's Irish Whiskey are a sponsor of the Session Trail, and they're a local distillery, a reviving brand, and we're very happy to be part. It's, I suppose, easier to go and speak to some majors, but I really wanted to see if we could support an independent local and grow with them. And see how we could evolve together. So Seamus Og and the team there at Ecklandville have been great supporters. So you have to build up lots and lots of partnerships. There's a lot of servicing of partnerships, which is a lot of work. There's a lot of administration around that. So we going back to the early stages when we developed the board, I recognized that we needed somebody with vast experience in event management, in event production, in live large scale event delivery, to make this dream a reality. So Patricia Murray came on board at that very early stage, and Patricia's a former pupil of Sean Maguire's, so there's a very strong pedigree and understanding of Belfast traditional music there. She was in classrooms with Sean Maguire as a child. She won't thank me for saying this, but she has that in her background, and from a Gaelscoil perspective as well, and growing up in West Belfast. But she has worked on some of the biggest live scale productions in this part of the world, and live television, and was part of the Columkill project in Derry in 2013 and Land of Giants.
It seems that you're tapping into what you've described there, whether it was the partnership with Dunville's, Patricia coming on board, yourself, that authenticity is really important. I know it's one of these words that's really popular at the minute, almost too popular that you're allergic to saying it, but it seems to be that that's very important to you. And I suppose in a world where there could be pressures to become more corporate, more what's the words, maybe globalization's coming in, external pressures coming in to tell you what you should be doing with something, how difficult is it to make sure that you're sticking to what you set out to achieve in the first place, but also then finding that sweet spot where you're letting it grow, but grow authentically?
Yeah, that's a very, very fine line to straddle. You've absolutely nailed it in the head there. The authenticity and the understanding of the art form is critical. So when I worked in large television productions, we would have had people who came from the background of that world of music, traditional music, and worked on our productions. We also had people who didn't come from any kind of background of traditional music, but had vast media experience.
And entertainment.
Yeah, and it brings a different energy, it brings a different thing, and wasn't always the right thing, wasn't always the best thing. There was a lot of learning to be gained from people who have vast experience in the world of media or broadcast, but I always felt things are not quite right unless they understand the art form. And so when building a team, when building partners and relationships, people who understand what your passion is and you know what's driving you first and foremost, that it's the music, that it's the appreciation of our tradition, if they have an understanding of that, it's far better. It just works better. That's not to say that people can't come in from outside of the world and bring their own experiences, and that absolutely helps and has huge benefits. But if there's a core understanding of the music, and Patricia has that because of her learning with Sean Maguire, and I've tried to bring that. Chloe McGregor, our marketing officer, she's a bagpiper. She's of that world. Her father, Andy, is a brilliant bagpiper. He's on our board, and having that understanding has helped me learn a lot about the world of bagpiping and that side of things. That
different perspectives.
Totally different perspectives, and makes you look at things with different, a different lens, and that has been a great journey to be on.
How key has that been to the success of Belfast TradFest, do you think? Initially, you outlined there how it was really important to incorporate all traditions of Belfast traditional music, whether it's an Ulster Scots tradition, Irish tradition. We're living in a very interesting time at the moment, particularly in terms of culture, where culture can be labelled in certain ways and pit people against each other. And I'm thinking back to 2017, it might not just have been as prominent, those ideas mightn't have been as prominent then. Do you think that helped you to basically set the foundations that both aspects, all aspects, were going to become a core part of something you were building?
Yeah, well, it didn't come out of thin air. I mean, other people have done this work, and I think particularly of people like Belfast Trad, Mary Fox, and the team that were there at early days always talked about cross traditions, cross culture, not necessarily cross community. They didn't use that language. Brian Vallely and the Armagh Pipers Club have operated on a cross traditions.
It's cross fertilization too, isn't it?
Yeah, and I just thought we could do that here. I thought it was important that we would do that here because this is a post-conflict society. This is, we're living in a space where we've been through terrible times, and if music can be one of the multipliers and one of the conduits for bringing people together, well, let's use that. Let's do that. And I've always considered bagpipes to be a traditional instrument. We faced some criticism around this. We've had resistance. We've had some challenges along the way. I've always considered fife players to be traditional musicians. And in some cases, fife players don't consider themselves to be not just traditional musicians, but not musicians at all. We've had people say, no, I'm not a musician, I'm a bandsman. So that's a whole other thing to take into account. I think it was the right thing to do. It wasn't any kind of a strategy thing. Like, we never went looking for money from the Ulster Scots agency. It wasn't about trying to find cross-community funding. It was just about doing the right thing to bring... And I remember distinctly being at early gig in the band festivals in Portland. Owen O'Brien and the team up there who ran them in the early days.
This kind of work was integral to what they were doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, from the start.
And I would sit in sessions in the Village Bar in Portland with fiddlers from Ballymoney and from Limavady. And I remember at that time there was a lot of resistance from I suppose the sort of traditional nationalist Republican Catholic community to this whole notion of an Ulster Scots movement and to the foundation of that, and that it was perceived as a kind of a money grab as part of the Good Friday Agreement. And so a lot of people were very, very cross about that. And I remember sitting in those sessions thinking, isn't this brilliant that I'm sitting with a young Protestant Unionist loyalist fiddle player, and that we're both learning about each other's world of tunes and world of music in a way that we wouldn't if he was in a Kick the Pope band and I was out marching in a Republican band, and so there's an opportunity in sessions and in traditional music educational settings for us to come together and to learn more about each other. So that has been at the core of what we've tried to do from day one.
And how far on do you think you are with that particular side of the work? Can you see progress being made, breaking down barriers, welcoming people into different communities that they might not have been are exposed to when they were growing up? Yeah,
it's a journey. It's a journey we're on, and I think we're making good progress. There's a long way to go in all fronts, but I think one of the things that we do, our concerts that take place in different parts of the city attract different audiences. So a concert that takes place in Culture and Macadam O'Feach draws heavily on their own database and their own community. We do get visitors who then, they see a gig in a programme, they don't know where Culture and Macadam O'Feach or the Falls Road is, they'll go. But the core of that audience will be a Culture and Macadam O'Feach audience. The gig that we run in the Strand Arts Centre is a very different audience, and they don't necessarily go to Culture and Macadam O'Feach, or they don't necessarily even go to the Empire or the Black Box. And so we're tapping into communities. I mean, Belfast is a city. We always consider it a big town. We've always said that about this amazing city, that it's not really a big city, it's a big town, but it does have its own distinct quarters and areas that people like to stay in their own part of town, and that's a historical thing. So this year the Strand has been redeveloped, and so we won't have an opportunity to use that space, and we had outgrown their smaller rooms, and we're hopefully will go back there next year into their big new developed art space. But this year we decided, okay, let's try something different. We were in the Titanic building last year with pipe and drum concert, and this year we're bringing it to Stormont, to the Great Hall. And that's a kind of a statement. We're partnering with the Eastside Arts Festival and with the Strand to bring traditional music to Stormont. We're bringing traditional music to the Grand Central Station this year, and there's been a lot of contention around Irish language signs, but we'll have traditional music and traditional Irish language songs there. We'll have set dancing there. We'll have boron circles there. And I think one of the things when I go back to your question about the early stages and what could you have hoped for, normalization, I suppose, in a way, of traditional music,
visibility,
and reaching into a mainstream so that everybody can enjoy this.
That's a big challenge for lots of festivals, and you travel to festivals all over the world, and I imagine the experience of seeing different festivals in different places all feeds into what you're trying to achieve here. I'm thinking of the Lorients, the Cap Bears, loads of festivals all over Europe, all over the States, and Scotland and England, and these islands as well. And sometimes when a festival is on in a city, particularly, you go into that city and you're going into your venues where you're going to find your tribe, you're going to find the festival, but you don't necessarily find it in the city centre on the main streets. And it's almost in the underground that you have to go into the underbelly to find the music and find the festival. Was that very much something that you wanted to address with Belfast TradFest? Yeah,
and as I mentioned earlier, we're kind of a hybrid model in that we bring together the Willie Clancy Summer School model, we bring together a Celtic Connections model. And then one of the things that has been very successful sort of post mid-90s is, and I'm looking at the poster here, Ennis TradFest.
Yeah.
And the session trail concept, and Phelan Fowell does it very well here in the summer as well. And this notion that you program 3 great musicians into a bar that has traditional music all year round, and that attracts a new energy and a new, and it's the place. Sessions are great because there's no pressure. You can go along to a session. You're not having to go to a box office. Yeah, you're not going past the box office. You're not going past the cloakroom. You're not having to have a ticket. You're not having to be seen by everybody entering the room as you might be in a venue. So it's a very relaxed way to engage with the festival. And one of the things we do at our session trail is we partner one of the master musicians who's a tutor at the summer school with local musicians, with emerging talent, with young up-and-coming musicians, so that they get to see a musician in an informal setting. And to watch musicians on stage is one thing, but to sit beside Kevin Burke or Pádraig McGovern or Louise Mulcahy or Bríche Chaibel in a session, to see how they carry themselves with other musicians, to see how they engage with the public, with the audience, to be able to say, I played a session with Chris Stout or Zoe Conway. That's an amazing thing for a young musician.
Have you found the dream job? Because there's a lot of power, a lot of responsibility comes with this as well when you're programming. Whether it's the festival or the session trail, the actual festival events, who you ask to come and work as a tutor for the week. There's a lot of work there.
Well, I don't know that you
feel a lot of ideas.
I don't know that you feel sort of dream job or power or any of that. You feel pressure. You feel there's a lot of work. There's a lot of effort. It's a kind of a never-ending job. You have to regularly at 2 a.m. close the laptop down and go, this is too much. This is enough, because it's massively challenging with funding. The funding landscape here in the north is horrific. Arts funding compared to our nearest neighbours in the Republic. The Abbey Theatre in Dublin gets €9.5 million from Arts Council of Ireland. The entire Northern Ireland Arts Council gets £9 million from Stormont. So we're operating on a really, really challenging funding environment. So to overcome that, we have to be very creative, and we have to be commercially able to stand on our own 2 feet. So we have to sell a lot of tickets for a lot of gigs to pay for a lot of other things, and that brings with it an energy. That brings, there's a kind of a responsibility and a drive and a never switch off type intensity that brings, and hopefully that feeds through to.
Do you have to mind yourself though, in terms of burnout? Because if you're saying about your mind never stopping, laptop closing at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's only so much of that you can do. Any person can do. Yeah,
well, anyone that's involved in festivals knows that's it. That's the job.
That's the gig.
That is the gig, and there are quiet times. Thankfully, you get to our festival finishes in July, and August is about post reporting and a lot of finance and wrapping up with funders and that. And then you can get to September and you have to enter into a creative mode again where you're looking to program. And we now, the summer festival is not the only thing we do now. We've taken on other things where we maybe those quiet times are no longer so quiet. But I can hear Patricia and Chloe.
St. Patrick's weekend's a big weekend for you too, and
so we've taken on a contract with Belfast City Council to program St. Patrick's Music Festival, and I always felt that St. Patrick's was contentious in this city. It has been. The notion around Irishness and who's not Irish in this city is contentious. And in the last few years, City Council have very carefully navigated that, and I think have done a pretty good job. And it felt like it was time to bring the programming to a more mature level in terms of celebrating what we are, who we are. And it has been tried in the past to bring content that wouldn't offend anybody to the stages, and it doesn't work. People here don't want to see a B-list pop idol celebrity on a stage in Belfast on St. Patrick's Day, and that's what we were getting. So with the programming for St. Patrick's Music Festival, I felt that we wanted to put the very, very best of traditional music, and maybe with St. Patrick's Music Festival programming, it allows me the opportunity to step slightly outside of the very traditional, so that we bring things like Afro-Celt sound system or a Nuna. Things that are still have a grounding in the world of traditional music, but reach out beyond that.
Yeah, more commercial.
So that's exciting that we have that window of opportunity to do that. And also this year we were commissioned to program the upcoming Maritime Festival. So it's a biannual festival that takes place on the Maritime Mile. And this year we have again, another opportunity to branch maybe more into a more mainstream rock pop world, but still with an identity connected to or rooted in tradition. So we have Hot House Flowers coming. We have Rihanna Connolly's Honey Feet. We have Sharon Shannon. We have, maybe I shouldn't say anymore because I'm not sure if it's been released yet, but an amazing programme of music for the Maritime Festival, and celebrating the very best of Irish and Scottish traditional music.
Given that is September, you're not giving yourself much downtime, because Belfast TradFest is at the end of July. Everything's leading in that direction now. This is where you get busy. This is where you see the fruits of all that labour coming together. What has been the highlight of your involvement with Belfast TradFest so far?
Well, something I mentioned earlier, that the greatest motivation, the greatest satisfaction is gained from seeing a generation of young Belfast traditional musicians coming through. The Erin Rose McMullins of this house, the Jude Scotts, and many, many others, really making a name for themselves, not just on the session scene in Belfast, but being exposed to a national profile. And very, very excited to watch that journey, to watch their journey, and the many more coming after them. There's a 13-year-old flute player, 14-year-old flute player called Etaine Murphy, who's
phenomenal,
world class. She's going to be amazing. So to have maybe had some tiny little hand or part in that, and amongst all the other people in the city who are doing amazing work, to see that can have an effect, and that those people will be carrying the flag for this city and for the music of this place going forward. That's the most satisfying. We can stand in the Waterfront Hall with the Bothy Band, which was a highlight. We can stand in the Ulster Hall with Frankie Gavin and Karen Matheson. They're pinnacle moments as well. But the real get the juices flowing type stuff is seeing Etaine, Jude, Pierce McMullen on the stage at the Frankie Kennedy or the Skullduggery, and being recognised for their musicianship. And bringing a flavour of here to theirs. That's thrilling.
You've painted a picture of a world of possibility, and there's no shortage of ambition there, no shortage of ideas and creativity, and fair play to you. Energy. I don't know where you get it. If I could have a spoonful, please, I'd be doing very well. But thanks a million. I think this is a conversation most definitely to be continued. But all the best for this year's Belfast TradFest.
Go to Mila Mahigat.
Can you anyway that?